Yo ho ho ho, what's up? It's your Soul King Krasmataz back with a character guide for none other than the top member of the worst generation. One of the future emperors of the sea. Our rubber gum protagonist himself, Monkey D. Luffy. It's been a real special time from him, both in the anime and the manga. I will be avoiding spoilers until the last few moments of the guide. Plus, technically speaking, all of the real spoilers for this game's moveset only go up to, I would have to say, Whole Cake Island is where they stop. So, if you're watching this by now, you already own Pirate Warriors 4. You're not worried too much about spoilers past Whole Cake Island. So, let's go right in there. As Luffy would say, shut up, let's go. So I'm going to be showing off two builds for him because I've found that there are two dramatically different ways you can play him. Much like he fights in the actual series, there is his serious, like, going all out mode, which is what, the majority of his major fights are. But then there is also his goofier, playful side, which I will be dubbing this first build post-Timeskip Luffy, and I will be dubbing the second one pre-Timeskip Luffy. Even though, ironically, they'll both be using the New World movesets. We're specifically focusing on New World and not pre-Timeskip Luffy for this build. So, the skills I like to run on him for his post-Timeskip moveset, you got your Core 4, your Cheat Death, Full Force Burst, Hidden Resolve, Hero Strength, right? Your Core 4. I give him Giant Fist and Concentration to help out with, primarily with the fact that all of his special moves are 3 stars or above. And we're really not going to be, honestly, Hidden Resolve's not terribly effective on this build. I probably should take it off. But, for all intents and purposes, having Hidden Resolve is best for when you're in his Gear 4. So, I do like Hidden Resolve better. Now, we're gonna have... the idea behind this is that, rather than using your specials to refill your stamina with Hidden Resolve, you're using your specials to refill your stamina just by triggering a burst, as you normally would. I decided to go with Conqueror's Haki to really cement that, Yonko presence for him. And then, naturally, if that weren't enough, you also go with his Gear 4 forms and his default burst. This will allow for him to be constantly bursting, constantly doing the most amount of damage possible. And depending on the situation you're in, right? Because you'll have his default moveset getting buffed by King of the Pirates. You'll have Gear 4 for, ironically enough, for movement, and for dealing with, I would say, a majority of the named bosses that aren't, Logias. But for dealing with Logias, you have Snake Man, someone who just pummels them and does not let them break. Snake Man is your jeweler. He's not... He does have some mobbing on him, but ultimately he's going to be your burst damage character. Whereas Bounce Man will be more for getting high kill counts. So the thing with not just Luffy, but a lot of the Sky-type characters in this game in particular, the game wants to emphasize a balance of ground to air to ground to air to ground, alternating the two. Oh, that was good timing. And that should do it for Prospero. Nice. Alright. So let's go over his moveset real quick. You got his light string. His light string is Jet Hawk. I've always loved the animation on New World Luffy. His C1 is Jet Pistol. You can charge it for 2 storage units. And by unit, I mean the amount of times he can actually charge it for. And then you have a C2. Light, heavy. Great for chipping away at armor. And for just peppering a small crowd of enemies. And if you cancel out of it with a launcher, it's great for following up. But we won't go into that just yet. But yeah, C2 is great. Is a great setup with his Jet Gatling. His C3. Sorry, his C3. Light, light, and heavy. Tremendous burst damage. Very limited range, though. And it can interrupt itself, as his movement will carry him over the geometry and occasionally just completely wreck the flow of the combo. So we have C4, light, 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 heavy, knocks up again, and then knocks up a third time. Another great one to cancel out of. Alright, and then we've got finally his C5. 1, 2, 3, 4 lights. Elephant Gun. This one is just tremendous crowd clearing. And you can also redirect its aim as you do it, which is a highly recommended move on my part. Alright, so his launcher is Axe. Great little launcher. His aerial light combo, 1, 2, 3, 4, is Bazooka. His aerial C2 is a little bit of Storm for all you Alabasta fans out there. His light, light, heavy. It's a little bit of ground Gatling, aerial Gatling. Is 1, 2, 3 lights. Into heavy is Missile, where he launches himself to the ground. Extremely useful to follow up with a Form Burst. And now finally, his light, 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 heavy is Jet Spear. Does a great amount of direct damage. Great to use on aerial targets. And follow up with a C1, which is Fireworks. Now what's interesting about Fireworks, not only does it do good chip damage, it actually will launch enemies up into the air. As long as their armor is broken, of course. Now let's start with Snake Man. So as I was saying earlier, he is just tremendous for dueling. Not too great at mobbing, though. Except for that move. His special... His special is certainly incredibly useful at decimating just a whole crowd of them like that. So anyway, his light string just does that little... it does a little spike to the ground. Anyway, I'm going to have to jet back in there in order to show off the full moveset. So one thing that's particularly useful about Snake Man Snake Man is really effective not only at chipping away at armor, but it's also useful at juggling targets, right? So almost like most Sky types, right? Sky types are very commonly seen to just juggle their targets all the time to trade off for their low damage. And Snake Man is similar, except that Snake Man also has extremely high damage. So his light heavy is this little, like, low range, and so is his C2. Now his 1, 2, 3 light, his C4, 1, 2, 3. It's that little python. Three, 4, 5. Does this little, like, hexagonal shaped attack. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Into Black Mamba. And then into this ult of his right here is one of my favorite combos to use. And I kind of rushed it, but normally what I like to do is I'll do his Black Mamba into his Gum Gum Stamp, Gatling Stamp, and then you go into that ult. It's tremendous damage. It's going to almost always clear boss armor. And what's also really nice about having his default form burst is that his default moveset is very strong in its own right. For example, I just combo right into Conqueror's Hockey, they're all done. The only reason why that guy didn't get killed is because I knocked him too high in the air. And honestly, Conqueror's Hockey comes back so quick that you rarely even need to worry about using it too much. Nice. Now let's show off a little bit of Bounce Man. Bounce Man is interesting because it's very fast, but very hard to control. Now this is his light string. It's just a small Kong gun. Very useful for comboing into his R1, which is a bigger Kong gun. Alright, so now his light heavy is this little... And then if you combine it into his other special, like I just did there, it's a nice little way to clear out remaining armor damage. Now this is his light heavy, Kong Organ. And here's his ult for good measure before I lose Bounce Man. Alright, we'll go back into Bounce Man again and use all of his moves. So, one thing that's useful to note about Gear 4 attacks is that, unlike in the series, there's really no repercussions to using Gear 4. You don't lose health, you don't lose stamina faster, or anything. In the future, though, that would be a nice implementation for Gear 4. So, in any event, though, this game doesn't really need to be more of a challenge either. You just dunk on everyone no matter what. Alright, going back into Bound Man. Now his light heavy is Rhino Schneider into a Leo Bazooka. Very useful way to start a battle off because it gives you a lot of movement. Now his light, 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 heavy is an air-to-ground King Kong gun. Very useful for juggling. And for leading into another giant King Kong gun like that. Now, one key thing about his ult to keep in mind is that even though he does fly straight up, he then comes right back down, right? He comes right back down, so you have to be very careful about your positioning and with your aim when you use Bounce Man's ult. Ultimately, what it comes down to is you use default if you're starting to get overwhelmed, or if you're just like trying to recharge your other gear 4s. This is a perfectly valid option to just blow through a horde of enemies, recharge your gear 4 options, use Bounce Man to move around the field as fast as possible to key opportune moments, blow through some armor, and then switch to Snake Man to deal with any particularly troublesome one-on-one fights such as this Logia here. Now, one thing that's particularly useful about Snake Man is that a lot of his moves can be used in the air, and they are actually slightly more effective in the air since you'll be juggling your enemies more frequently as well. Alright, Croco Boy. You wanna go? Let's cheat death a little. Meat. Glorious meat. We don't want to die on the middle of a character guide. Also his... Oh, I failed to show it there. But Snake Man's aerial potential really increases the range of his attacks, whereas when you're on the ground, the range is actually going to be slightly mitigated by the fact that you don't have this... it'll be easier to explain if I visually show it, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. This attack in the air actually has more ground to cover than it does on the ground. And it does slightly more damage, I would say, as well. Same for these ones right here. 5, 6. Then they do if he's just on the ground. Although on the ground, those moves have more of an area of effect. His C1, which is what I'm doing right now, just as heavy, is also incredibly effective for just like breaking combo chains apart and making so you don't have to like follow out an incredibly tedious one. And that's especially effective to do if you're very spammy. Which, you know, admittedly, sometimes when I'm playing competitively, I like to get a little spammy with Luffy. Sometimes it's just easier to spam out a tough fight to make sure you get the kill as soon as possible. No shame in it. Now, when you're in default form, it's equally important, as it is with Snake Man, to use your aerial moves just as often as your ground ones. Because if you're not in the air, you won't have access to a majority of Luffy's strongest crowd control options. Because on the ground, his crowd control options is much more limited, and his ground game is more about just hard point damage and knockback. But in the air, the chip damage that's required to really break armor fast is more consistently accessible, I would say, with moves like his C3 and his C2. And it's really just going to be about knowing which situation advises for which form. Ultimately, I'd say his default form is best for just clearing through crowds of trash thugs. Balance Man is good at that too, but you really want to save Balance Man for mobility and for speed clearing. Particularly in situations like this, where you have a giant boss to deal with. I would also say that Bounce Man is one of your better damage options too. Got him. Alright. So that's my New World Luffy moveset. Now let's go ahead and switch up the tone a bit. And we'll do his, what I like to call his pre-Timeskip, goofier moveset. Even though I'm not going to be actually doing his pre-Timeskip moveset, of course. We'll be doing post, just with a different build. And what better way to signify the different build than with the goofiest possible skin that he has in the collection. So I like Jet Shell as his ult of choice. For this one, it symbolizes and embodies his goofiness while also dealing a ton of damage. Very useful overall. UFO, self-explanatory in my opinion. It is usable in the air. It comes back insanely fast. Great mobility, great chip damage against armor. Although if you really prefer having less mobility and more damage output with this moveset, I would also say Jet Stamp Gatling is a perfectly valid option for the moveset. A lot of people do favor Gum Gum Storm. I myself do not. I prefer just a standard launcher. Giant Scythe is another valid option, but it's not particularly effective. I run Windmill myself because of the flavor of the move, but there are certainly better moves. In my opinion, I would say that if you're going for a more meta build, Jet Stamp Gatling over Windmill is the way to go. However, since I'm so used to using Jet Stamp Gatling on my New World build, we're just going to go with something a little more goofy. And you'll see what I mean. And just for the sake of combat here, we're going to keep this same build. But normally, if you're going to run this build, I would say swap out Concentration for Peerless Strength. That way you'll get as much smash damage as possible out of this build. Alright, Lucy. Go be the hero that this guy deserves. And there's UFO in action. Now, what's important to know about Windmill, it does not work on enemies that have armor, but once their armor's broken, you can even toss someone like Jozu around, which is a great time. Oh, he lost his cape. Alright, so maybe don't use this costume Don't use this costume with post-Timeskip Luffy. The cape is glitched. If that bothers you, do not use it. Oh man, that's funny though. That said though, I love the skin too much to care. But yeah, Windmill's funness just speaks for itself. Like, look at that. Right out of Pirate Warriors 3. Now, what's really useful about UFO 2 is that even if you use it while on the ground, it'll launch him in the air. Now look at that. They just didn't even move. Oh boy. Alright, we don't hate Ace as a character, but fighting Ace in this game is horrible, and I hate it. But we're going to show you that even this moveset... Oh, fuck. He burst. Alright, let's see if we can survive. Oh no. Okay, we got a burst too. Oh, it's not okay. Alright, we gotta avoid Ace here. This is insane. Alright, this should hit him. Good shit. Let's go. So this build is definitely more for, like, capturing that feeling of just Luffy having a good time. Being himself. Not going all out, and just never taking these massive battles perfectly seriously. I would say in this sense, having both of these builds, from a fan's perspective, is one of the most satisfying ways to play this character. Someone who literally has so many moveset possibilities that it would almost be criminal to just limit yourself to only one. Alright. Now, a very effective combo string to use for default Luffy. Start with his C2, go into the air with a full light string, into his C3, and then into his C4 to go back to the ground. Okay, so it appears I was wrong about UFO launching you airbound. We're not all perfect here, folks. Also, I will say that despite the fact that most of the command grabs in this game are terrible and have no practical purpose for competitive play, if you're just trying to have a good time, Gum Gum Windmill is just a really fun move. And ironically enough, it's actually great for mobbing, like, unnamed, like, pirate commanders in particular. Naturally, when it comes to your jet pistol, the more charges it has, the more damage it's going to do, and the more knockback it'll have. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. And let's close it out with a Gum Gum Jet Shell. Very nice. Listen, guys, I mean, he's gonna be the king of the pirates if he was just limited to one moveset. Then this game wouldn't have been trying as hard. And with that, I'll be rounding out this guide with not only a promise of another one shortly, but it will also be for Monkey D's first mate, the future strongest master swordsman, Roronoa Zoro himself. Till next time.